Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Walker. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So picking up in the aftermath of last episode, like I said, I was not the fan of how Cordell handled everything, but this episode really does lean into, I figured as much, what he was lashing at Stella was because he didn't know how to handle a lot of stuff. Plus, he was dealing a lot of stuff himself as Abby, because Abby chastised him because she's the one. Well, I think it was her and because obviously Cassie's gotten to the point she's in good terms with all the moms. Like obviously she's with Abby and Keisha, who I love that they're on the first. She's calling Trey's mom by her first name, so they're on a first name basis. But basically, Abby got pissed at Cordell for how he handled the situation. And for him, he feels like his mom's undermining his authority because it's right, she needs to learn consequences. Yeah, but you didn't bother to hear her side of the story. He's like, no, she's lied to me and I'm not going to deal with her lies anymore. And I think this episode did a really good job leaning into the fact is that Cordell hasn't bothered listening. That's been his biggest issue. And understandably, he's been through what he's been through. And so he's been so busy that he's never really taken the chance to take a beat and listen. So I thought that was such an interesting, lesson he learns in this episode, because at first, he was going to put off the whole Liam thing, we go through this all together, but he wanted to put that off until he dealt with all the Stella and August stuff. But we'll circle back to the Stella and August stuff kind of lastly, because the everything with Trey and Cassie deals with the Liam and Cordell stuff. So Liam and Cordell end up going back to the place that they were held hostage. And it's about kind of confronting that trauma directly after everything that they've been through. It's like a step that I think you typically have to do by yourself. But, Liam's hoping to do it with his brother by his side because he feels better. Because it's right, we both went through this together. We're the only ones who can understand what each other went through. And it turns out things run even deeper for Liam because something he hasn't had an opportunity to talk about. Because Cordell's just thinking right, we've been through the same thing, the torture and stuff. It wasn't just physical torture for him, it was also mental torture for Liam, because they made him believe he was burying his own brother. He thought the entire time he was digging the grave, he thought, oh my God, they killed Cordell. And then finally, oh my God, Cordell isn't dead. It ended up being the guy that Cordell tried to convince, he was talking to. What was this guy's name? Neo, who had a daughter or something like that. That guy, because Cordell kind of made him crack a little bit, they ended up killing, because it's no, we can't have you around and be someone that Cordell could take advantage of. We need to mentally break him, and you are a crack in our armor that could expose us. So we can't have any weakness in our group. And they were probably trying to break Cordell to make him part of their team anyway. So it's right, you've proven yourself to be weak, so Cordell's going to be your replacement sort of thing. So that's that. But when it's all said and done, for Liam, it's regardless of, yes, I know you're alive, but even then, it's that feeling of knowing that you possibly were I lost my brother. He's I couldn't handle that, and I still can't. Even now, it still feels too real to shake. And because Cordell was he had no idea what his brother was going through, because he thought right, we went through the physical torture, and that's the thing. Cordell was going through what he was going through, and he wasn't ready to listen to Liam. And maybe if he had listened to Liam, he would have found out sooner that what Liam was really holding on to, that Liam's circumstances were a little different from his, that it was some psychological and mental torture that was kind of thrown his way as well. So, and the interesting thing is Trey and Cassie are on protective details of the mayor and kind of his chief of staff. And that actor, I feel like there's something else I know him from, but the first thing that comes to mind is spoilers, I know he was the bad guy in the first Percy Jackson movie. He was the lightning thief. That's what I remember him from, but I feel like there's something else I know him from, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. But I'm I feel like there's a TV or a show or something I know him from, but it's that's the first thing that pops in my mind. I'm pretty sure that's the same actor. Those movies were that movie had to be that movie's came out 2013 maybe. That movie's almost a decade old maybe. So it has been 10 years. I think so. But either way, so there's that, right? And so they're on protective duty, and I love that, Cassie has her ideas of like who Kevin is. It's like, oh, because he seems like such a bro and he's a politician, so she doesn't have the, like, she thinks like, oh, he's putting on these fake smiles and stuff like that. But like Trey's like, yeah, he's a lot because he's all about oh, that's gonna be baller and stuff like that. He's kind of like, he's like your typical bro. Especially, it's an interesting timing too, because Trey and Cassie are talking about the conversation about relationships. Obviously, like, Trey hasn't really attempted to date anyone since Mickey. And obviously, Cassie's last date was with Sean. So it's like, yeah, finding out like, yeah, the person you went on a date with was like a military operation. They were like trying to suss you out. Plus that same person ended up kidnapping your partner. That's a lot. That will cause kind of some trust issues. So, because if anything, I would have always assumed the Trey and Mickey of it. I mean, not Mickey. Of Cassie and it all. That's kind of where I thought I was going. Still a potentiality, but they might just be like, no, we're just friends. I don't know. We'll see whether that ends up being a thing or not. I don't know what the Ranger policy is on dating another Ranger. I don't know if that's even like a possibility, so. But obviously Cassie got to see like a different side of Kevin when she saw him, like the way he was handling like those kids. He was just, like, they're two brothers that were kind of at each other's throat, because it's like, hey, this one spilled juice on me and stuff like that. But it's like, hey, though it's not your dad and it's not your grandfather who you can turn to when the going gets tough. It's your brother, which obviously is a nice parallel, especially in this episode with everything going on between Cordell and Liam. So I think just kind of a neat parallel in that regard. And so, like I say, Cassie just happened to see like a different side of him in that regard, because she's like, oh, are those like kids of some donors or something like that? He's like, I don't know, it just probably not, but he's just like, yeah, I just wanted to help ease that situation. So I'm like, hey, Kevin's a good guy. So it's like, okay, so we are setting up potentially a Cassie and him thing. If it ends up becoming that, we don't know, but at the very least, this could be steps towards her opening herself up more to, like, being a little more trusting and kind of like, not judging a book by its cover. I mean, considering like once again, that Sean situation would make you kind of a little less unsure of who you can trust. But the ultimate tie comes into the fact, the tie between that story and Cordell and Liam's story is that he ended up suffering an attack from something. And they obviously, it looks like some of the similar things that you would see from a nerve agent attack, which is obviously the same thing Cordell dealt with like in the first two episodes, because that's what Sean and them were like packaging. So it's like, right, this might not be over, which I kind of felt like, oh, like it can't be like already over with after like two episodes, or it has to be a bigger plot. Turns out it is. There's only one person in this episode. One of those people ended up being the guy who, Liam remembers. It's like, oh, this is the guy who told me that I was burying Cordell. But yeah, he was still working on nerve agent stuff, and they were making a letter and sending it to the mayor. They're making a point. They're like this very extremist, radical group trying to make change. That's what they're all about. Like, almost like, oh, they're like domestic terrorist type of people believing that they're making a good change in the country. Like I said, I still believe Walker's like, yeah, they lean into the whole, oh, he's dead thing, but I think Cordell thinks he's dead, but not in actuality, he's not. I think he is orchestrating all of this because, once again, they went through a lot to get Cordell in particular. There's some correlation there. There has to be. So that's why I still feel like he might be alive, even though it's set up to be like, no, he died when Cordell was still in the military and stuff. So I don't know. We'll see how that kind of plays out. I've still had that in the back of my mind still, especially now knowing like, yeah, it definitely isn't over. So, but either way, Cordell and Liam end up investigating a place where like it's near like a mine where they could be storing this stuff. And it was at Eastvale, and Cordell goes in, and sadly, he got injected with the stuff, but luckily, Liam, and I'm sure this will help him in the long run. It still won't make it any easier, but killing one of the people responsible for causing some of his trauma, I think you would at least think it would go at least part of the way helping him. So in the end, he was able to save Cordell. It still almost came true that, like, right, what he's been feeling this entire time, worried about seeing his brother dead, and it almost happened. But luckily, he was able to get to him in time because they knew what they were dealing with. So it's like, right, if it was anyone else, Cordell would probably be dead, because they already went into this, the ambulance and stuff like that already went into it knowing like they were dealing with a nerve agent and stuff like that. So, but at the end of it all, Cordell kind of opens up about everything, that why he had really kind of been avoiding Liam is because he felt ashamed. Because when Emily was pregnant with Stella, he's like, I promised I would not re-enlist. I want to be there for the family. And what happened when Emily died? I fled. I fled from, I was in my trauma. I was in my place and I fled. But you stayed behind this entire time. It wasn't, so for him, it was like, this is a culmination of so many different things. Everything with, Liam, it was just because he didn't want to revisit the trauma, but he also felt bad because it's just like, because this all connects to, I fled and yes, I came back and I've been here, but he still feels like that guilt of leaving his family when he promised to stay. And then he got, regardless of, hey, I got kidnapped, I missed Stella's graduation. And because of that, because of my kidnapping, it threw Stella's life completely off course. Because, I mean, maybe Stella had her reservations about college and stuff, maybe, but what really was a catalyst for her was like, right, Dad getting kidnapped made going to college seem so small. And he's like, he feels even more guilt over that. It's like, for him, it's like, no matter what I do, I end up being the cause of the problems for my family. Like, he feels like, I end up being the reason why my family continues to suffer. Like, he feels like every bad thing that's ever happened, any suffering his family's been through, he feels like he's the cause of it. But it's like, no, you're not, you know? And Liam had to convince him, like, I know it's not going to be easy, but I know we can get through. Like, I'll be able to get through whatever I've got to get through because I know we're in this together, brother. It won't be easy, but we have each other. You are here now. And because he also regrets, it's like, if I had listened to you, I'm sorry for not listening, but I'm listening now. And it's like, yeah, better late than never. And for Liam, it's like, sometimes someone just wants to be heard. And that line, the moment that was said, I was like, thank you, because Cordell needed to hear that, especially how he was not willing to listen to Stella's side of things either. And that kind of ties into this episode when they're going to clean up the sidestep. So Abby is at the very least willing to hear where Stella is coming from, being like, oh, so August only called you because the only reason why you were there in the first place is because August called you because he got stuck in the supply closet. And it is the thing of, he's acting like it's nothing. He's just like working off his hangover. I'm like, do you not feel any regret about your sister getting locked up? He's like, yeah, but he's like, Dad doesn't, like, when he talked to Stella, he's like, yeah, but you think Dad's going to listen to me either? He's almost kind of like, yeah, like, the fact is he's so nonchalant about it. He doesn't realize how much of a little tool bag, because I'm going, like I said, I'm Team Stella. I was like, you're acting like a dick. I get where it's coming from, because he doesn't have as much sympathy for his sister, because he feels like, right, everyone's got sympathy for you. What about me? You were the one that was supposed to leave, and now because you're here, everyone's walking on eggshell. Everyone's catering to you. This is supposed to be my time to shine, because for so long I've had to play the little brother role, especially at school. Oh, it's Stella's little brother. And like last episode, he got that boost from one of his friends being like, no, like, it isn't just because you're Stella's brother. Bro, we think you're wild considering everything. I think maybe hearing that was more harm than good. I don't know. But he kind of lashes out at Stella as being like, right, you're kind of like co-opting, you're like taking advantage of the family. And Stella's like, I'm not doing that. She's like, if I am, I don't mean to. And he's like, well, you know, you continue doing what you're ever going to do, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do because he's like, you're indecision and stuff like that. It's like, she's sorry that, like, yeah, your dad's kidnapping, like, affected her, and where she's trying to figure out, like, maybe I want something different from life. And I feel like, because her getting so much treatment from the rest of the family, them kind of bending over backwards there, you know, but he feels like, right, it's a situation, he's kind of the Liam in this regard. That's why he connects so much, and why he kind of uses the whole situation of, like, right, I'm the little brother, because, like, Cordell and Stella, like, have a lot of commonality, and I think in this instant, August feels like Liam. He feels like not heard. And Stella's now kind of feeling that too, but Liam feels like he's continuously not heard, because it's all about Stella. Oh, she didn't go to college. Oh, what is she going to do? Like, he feels like he's kind of like, he still continues even after all this, because it was supposed to be my chance to kind of not be in your shadows. And for her, it's like, I had no idea you felt like this, because he never talked about it. And I think that's August's thing. Like, he never really talks about everything. He keeps it to himself, you know? He keeps a lot of that, because especially when it was all said and done, like, you think back to when their dad came back at the beginning of the series, he was the one that was kind of like the more forgiving of their dad because he ended up shouldering like a lot of that. Stella made it clear how she felt, but August kind of kept some of his like stuff to himself. He kind of like bottled a lot of that up, was kind of the whole point and everything. So in the long run, that gave Stella a lot to think about because he was like, right, you should be mad at dad and not me. He's like, no, I am mad at dad, but I'm also mad at you because he's like, because from August's standpoint, it's like, yeah, dad wasn't listening to me nor you. He's the one that left you in the like in jail like that. You shouldn't be mad at me for that. It's like, yeah, but this came about because of your actions. You aren't taking responsibility. And he just kind of bails. And luckily Colton showed up and he cooked like his happy curry for her and Abby. And Abby actually gave Stella some advice where it's like, hey, her and her brother like had some issues too. She's like, I actually don't even remember what we like had issues about, but it was because we argued about nonsense, and it wasn't until we had some distance from each other that I actually started to miss him. You know, it's like, right, despite our issues and stuff like that. Once I've come across this recently and something else too. It's just like, man, that sibling issue of like, siblings kind of not being, I think it's manifest. I was like, siblings not being in a good place with each other. That might be what I'm thinking about. It might be something else. But siblings not being in a good place. I think I might have talked about it. Like, that's a little close to home in some regards. But it is like, and it is that whole, Abby's whole point is like, right, it's not just the distance apart, but growing up a little might, also helps with that. But she's like, don't make it so that it's so long you go without talking, because if you don't, like, you give it time, but like, don't let it take too much time, because you don't want that gap between you to grow more and more. So obviously Jerry's away and she leaves Colton in charge of her place. Is like, hey, you could stay there for a while. That way I don't have to worry about you like going all the way back to the Davidson farm just when you were locking up like the sidestep and stuff. And I guess Stella's going to be moving in there with him for a little bit too, because I figured like that was kind of happening around the same time. So I figured she'd probably move in with Colton. It's like, right, they're just going to be staying there. I don't think they consider it like moving in. But the sad thing is, the moment Cordell, like, he wants to apologize to Stella, but she's already moved out. So we'll see what this means for August now that he has that space, but he's probably still going to feel like, well, Dad's still concerned about Stella. But Stella, like, made sure everything on the list was done. She probably had Abby's help with that, because he probably, who knows how much August actually got done before he bailed. So we'll see how things kind of go on that front, and especially Walker, because it's that thing of, yet again, it's like that guilt of, I pushed Stella away. I wasn't willing to listen to her last night or this morning, and I said what I said, and I shouldn't have. I should have actually listened to her side of the story, and now he's worried, like, right, it may be late, but it still should be done regardless. But I think for Stella, it's what she needs. It's what the entire family needs, is to weather this storm, to find their way through this, especially for Stella and August find their own ways. So we'll see where things kind of go on that front. But what's also interesting, too, is that we had the situation with, I was like, oh, yeah, because I was like, yeah, they just made that Jerry stuff come up. When she left the other episode, I want to say that was last episode, I was like, yeah, it did seem kind of sudden. And she said she's dealing with some family stuff. I was like, that's interesting. And we see that in her, what she's packing up, there's a file with Hoyt's name on him. Interesting timing, obviously, because there's also Walker Independent. So I don't know if this has something to do with his family or something like that. But obviously, Matt Barr is playing like one of Hoyt's ancestors in Walker Independent, so it makes you wonder if there's some correlation there or something. That maybe whatever it is, that maybe, I don't know. Maybe it won't be, but I think it is interesting, which makes me wonder, since he's on Walker Independence, there might be some flashbacks with Hoyt in it, and that Matt Barr could pop up for. We might kind of be in that type of situation, and everything. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see how that ultimately ends up playing out, whether that ends up being the case or not. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm curious what it is about Hoyt she's looking into, or what's going on that front. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.